And joining us now to unpack all of this is an excellent panel. We have independent journalist נייט Friedman. He's also the host of the נייט Friedman Show. We're also joined by Adam Saabyt. He's the director of the China Policy Initiative at the America First Policy Institute. Thank you both so much for joining us. נייט, starting with you, you've been covering the links between CCP-aligned left-wing groups causing chaos across the U.S. Did this hearing hit on the most important aspects of this issue?
Yes, absolutely. And look, I've gone to these protests and I've proved it. I've walked up to Manolo de Santos before a protest has started and I said, "Are you being paid over $20 million to protest?" No denial. I asked David Chung, the same person I've investigated before, who works with the People's Forum, who also works with Rise and Resist, who's funded by George Soros. And when you look at Rise and Resist, you see that, yes, it's funded by Soros, but David Chung is funded by Roy Neville Singham at the People's Forum. So you'll often see that these NGOs, they spread their employees across multiple of them and only get paid by one of them just to hide where the money is.
And Adam, what is the Chinese regime trying to accomplish by influencing groups like these?
What they're trying to accomplish is victory by political warfare, or you could call it hybrid warfare. Of course, they're building up their military, their Navy, their Air Force, their nuclear arsenal, but they get more bang for the buck to fund these violent groups on our streets who already want to take this radical action. Why not fund these groups and undermine our society from within? That's their goal.
And נייט, one name that keeps popping up here is Neville Roy Singham. He's an American, but currently resides in China. Now, you and I have spoken about him before, but unpack for us why there is so much focus on him and what groups is he accused of propping up?
Yeah, there's so much focus on him because if you just look at New York, if you were to get rid of the People's Forum, if the People's Forum didn't exist, you wouldn't see over 90% of the protests that you see in New York. And I don't know if the camera can see this, but you can see on the same day, say January 20th, Stop ICE Terror, and then you can see on the same day, it's a Free Palestine. So they're double dipping on these social causes. You can see that's how it's going on. Singham is behind all of this.
And Adam, how hopeful are you that hearings like this will lead to real change, and what would that look like?
Let me say that recognize this here is incredibly important. It had incredibly good results. We needed to shine a light on all of the aspects of the civilizational efforts of China. Unfortunately, though, I have to say I'm not hopeful that this hearing will lead to results, because basically when you close one avenue of the Chinese Communist Party, they'll find another avenue, whether it be overseas police stations or through their student groups, many other avenues. So while this is incredibly important, I praise the committee. I don't see immediate change coming from this.
I want to get to that, but first, נייט, your thoughts on this. What would real change look like here?
Roy Neville Singham testifying in front of Congress, and we get to the bottom of what's really going on behind this $20 million that he tried so hard to hide. Putting it through a donor-advised fund. If you're proud of the money you're sending someone, you don't hide it like this. So, yeah.
And Adam, one of the hearing witnesses said that some Singham-funded organizations that promote CCP-aligned narratives fail to register as foreign lobbyists under FARA. How does FARA fit into all of this?
It's incredibly important. It should come into play more. FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act of 1938, it was first instituted to combat Nazi propaganda, German-American groups that were funded by the German government that needed to declare themselves as foreign agents. It's been used very sparingly since then, unfortunately, over the past decades. Interestingly, it was revived in order to go after Paul Manafort, a Trump ally back in the first term, but it's been used very selectively and very sparingly. It needs to be revived to go after these organizations which are obviously acting on behalf of the CCP.
And נייט, when you're on the ground speaking to these protesters, is there a sense that they're aware of the foreign influence funds coming in? What is the sense on the ground of why they're protesting?
Well, many are not. Many are passionate about the issues, but again, that the protests wouldn't be organized if it wasn't for Singham. And, I have to say that the rhetoric, having Stop ICE Terror, calling ICE terrorists, it's very clearly inciting violence. So, yes, it's not just CCP, but it's Singham that's inciting violence and destroying the West from within by calling ICE terrorists.
And Adam, it's not just protests and organizations on the streets. How much lobbying do Chinese businesses do on Capitol Hill?
A huge amount, not only on Capitol Hill, but also to the agencies. I'm proud that my organization, AFPI, did a deep dive on one aspect of that, the agricultural conglomerates, multi-billion-dollar companies. They used to be Western-owned. They're now CCP state-owned. Syngenta and Smithfield, for example, respectively, spent $8 and $11 million in lobbying over the past decade. That includes the Department of Commerce, the Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Trade Representative, when we were engaged in the most consequential trade negotiations with China that directly benefited China, the Phase 1 trade deal in the first Trump administration. There's also defense companies that are listed as PLA defense companies on the 1260H list, which the U.S. government designates, but they're still able to lobby. One of them is DJI Drones, the viewers might be familiar with, which is a designated PLA defense company. It has been able to lobby against the Drones Act in the Congress to the tune of $1 million.